The title of our message for today is something that you would normally hear Kathy Griffin use or the late Joan Rivers use when they were covering the red carpet events and as the glitterati were showing up for the Oscars or what have you. Who are you wearing? Meaning, what designer's dress are you wearing? Maybe Giorgio Armani, Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren, Oscar de la Renta. How's that? Pretty good. I happen to be wearing Bruno Magli shoes right now. Very expensive. Didn't buy them. Got them as a gift from somebody. In fact, I got my suit as a gift. Not just this one, every one you see was a gift. My tie, my belt, they were gifts. The t-shirt under my white shirt was a gift. The white shirt I bought myself and have been wearing it for 20 years. Okay, most of the good things I have were purchased by people who are tired of me looking like a slob. So I'm the kind of guy that will wear a shirt for 20 years. And so they bought me my clothes. And so who am I wearing? I'm wearing Free, and it is my favorite brand. My second favorite brand is Dead, as in dead men's clothes. And I have, my mother started giving me dead men's clothes, family friends that died who happened to be my size. I got a tuxedo that I used to wear to fraternity parties, huge hit, and it left an impression upon me. So I like clothes that, if you'll pardon the pun, have been passed on to me. I'm obviously not the guy that you want to go to for fashion advice. I'm not a fashionista by any stretch. But there are some in our faith tradition that are bringing the faith to bear in the fashion industry. There is now a Christian Fashion Week that brings together a certain kind of designer that creates clothing with faith in mind. It seeks, for example, beautiful clothes that maintain a modest, cover a little more skin maybe than some others do. Hopefully they're venturing into some other areas like more sustainable materials for clothes that last for a while, like my 20-year-old shirt, and avoiding business practices that employ sweatshops or child labor. That would be a nice distinctive as well. Actually, the Bible has a lot to say about clothing, from the fig leaves that Adam and Eve stitched together in the first book of the Bible, all the way to the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, where we hear about the white-robed throng. And in between, there are biblical stories about Joseph and his many-colored coat, and the distinctive garb of the prophets, which is kind of more in line with my style, if you go back and look at that, very rough and casual. And then Jesus, who has a transfigured robe that he wears. So the Bible mentions clothing and indeed fashion in many different places. So we're going to find out in our message today, who are you wearing? Who should you be wearing? And who should I be wearing? We're going to find out in our message. But first I want to offer a disclaimer because we're going to start off with some pretty pointed statements in the Bible. I want you to know that the Bible, while it seems to debunk fashion in some ways, it really has got a deeper message, and we're going to explore that. It is true that outward appearances can sometimes mask more substantive issues, but it doesn't have to. So even a slob like me can become interested in fashion. I organized a trip for a group in the church to visit a lot of places around and about here. One of them was the Fashion Museum at Kent State University. I took this group fully expecting to be bored to death. I want to tell you, it was a fascinating trip. I commend that museum to you to visit. When I was there was one special feature was little slippers that Japanese ladies wore when their feet were bound back in the day as a fashion statement. And I found it fascinating. So I commend it to you, and I don't want you to think that I'm poo-pooing all this. So stay with me. you who are dressed nice today in the pews, you who are wearing makeup today, you who are wearing jewelry like this gold wedding ring and this silver motorcycle tire on this other hand. So I'm not opposed to these things. I wear Bruno Magli shoes after all. But first things first, what are the Bible's warnings about clothing in the Scripture? Many of them, not surprisingly, are addressed to the fairer gender, so we'll begin with them, but not end with them by any stretch. Paul writes to Timothy, I also want women to dress modestly, with decency and propriety, not with braided hair or gold or pearls or expensive clothes, but with good deeds, appropriate for women who profess to worship God. Now, I suppose there are contexts where social standing is determined by what is worn. We never see that in our own lives. We tend to see it when we are on the outside looking in. If you'll remember back in high school, when social standing could be determined by what you wore, what kind of footgear you wore. Outfits, when I was in high school, it was a redneck high school, dingo boots were the big deal. And I couldn't afford them, but I found a knockoff pair that was made to look like them. And, I remember walking into school that first day. I was somebody because of what I was wearing. Well, we don't leave all juvenile things behind when we grow up. There are some social contexts in which we move, exist where social standing can be determined by what we're wearing, how well we're put together, how well we look. Church should not be one of those places. In a family of faith, we are all children of God, loved with a perfect love by our Father in heaven, who intends for us to accept and value one another, not on the basis of outward appearances. This is what I think Paul has in mind in that statement, and Peter echoes it. Your beauty should not come from outward adornment, such as braided hair and the wearing of gold jewelry and fine clothes. Now listen, he's not saying don't do this stuff. He's saying your beauty shouldn't come from it. Instead, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. For this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to make themselves beautiful. And he's referring back to Old Testament times. And he bases it upon Old Testament precepts, one of which came from the author of Proverbs, who wrote, "Charm is deceptive, and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised." Charm is deceptive. It can cover a not-so-nice person on the inside for a while, but beauty is fleeting, and when it passes, when physical, skin-deep beauty passes away, all that's left is what? A not-so-nice person. But a woman who fears the Lord, who honors God in her manner of speech and dress, but most importantly, behavior, that's a beauty that is to be praised. Now, my Nancy is a classy gal. I think she is, and she's now in her early 60s, if I could be so indelicate to say that. And sometimes, occasionally, she'll make a comment about not being like she was in her 20s and 30s, maybe. Okay? And I got to admit, I met her when I was in my 20s, and she caught my eye, and I loved her in a goofy way. Came across some cassette tapes of that period of life. Painful to listen to. You will never hear those. But, but over time, that goofy love has translated into a very deep and abiding love for her, because she's a human being. She's got her failings and faults like everybody else, but inside, that woman is a beautiful, beautiful person. And that is something I love much more deeply as time goes on. And I'm going to tell you, so I go along with what the scriptures are saying here. in terms of a beauty that is more than skin deep, and I think most men would go along with that as well. In fact, I think guys kind of get a bad rap in the culture of just being these superficial, there are exceptions, I understand that, but I think most guys appreciate a person who is beautiful on the inside. It's a lasting beauty that stays with a person, gets deeper over the years. Now, speaking of guys, I don't want us to think that only women are concerned with outward appearances. When I was in that fraternity, I remember some of the guys would pump dumbbells before a frat party on the off chance that a girl might brush her hand across his guns, It just wanted them to be pumped up and hard and everything. Now, I had nothing to work with, so I didn't do that. I put on a tuxedo and went to frat parties. Guys are like that, and we value stature and prowess, physical prowess. It is a fact that a taller guy advances professionally more than a less tall guy. That a taller guy makes more money over a lifetime than a less tall guy. Isn't that strange to know? But it is a fact because we value those things. And not only in our day, but all the way back. When Samuel was sent to anoint a new king for Israel, he was sent to Jesse, who had 8 sons. One of them was to be the new king. Samuel assumed it was the eldest, the tallest of his sons, Eliab. We read, "But the Lord said to Samuel, 'Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him.' The Lord does not look at the things man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." And as it happened, it was Jesse's youngest, shortest, smallest son who was selected to be the king. His name was David. And King David was a man that St. Paul would later say was a man after God's own heart. When God looks beyond outward appearances to the heart of a man or woman, what does he see? Does he see something beautiful, or does he see something that is ugly? To put it slightly differently, what kind of adornment does God find beautiful? Our text addresses that. "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience." This is the kind of adornment that God finds beautiful, not arrogance, rudeness, but humility, patience, gentleness. Peter echoes Paul with an emphasis upon humility. "All of you, clothe yourselves with humility toward one another, because God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble." That is the kind of clothing, it is the kind of adornment, it is the kind of fashion statement that God finds beautiful when he looks beyond the outward appearance to the heart of a person. And that is exactly what we find beautiful when we look at a person's heart that has not been covered up by externals so much. So I don't think that the point of the message here is that we should not wear Bruno Magli shoes or wedding rings or motorcycle rings, or that we should not wear makeup or things like that. In fact, sometimes they can be accents that highlight something deeper and more substantive in a person. The point is not to do these things. It is not to stop there. It is to go deeper and to become beautiful on the inside. One of the more fascinating testimonies about Jesus, to me, is what is not said about him. What is not said. There is nothing in the Bible said about his physical appearance. There is a statement, a messianic prophecy in the Old Testament before he's born, looking forward to when he comes, that says he had no beauty or majesty to attract us to him. Nothing in his appearance that we should desire him. But outside of that, nothing is said about Jesus' physical appearance. And that floors me, because before he got into trouble with the powers that be, Jesus was a rock star. The multitudes came out to wherever he was to hear him. You would think there would be some reporter covering the event, somebody with that kind of eye, saying, he glowed, his countenance, he had a good tan, and, nothing about his physical appearance is in the Scriptures. I think that God, in his wisdom, did not want to distract our attention away from the surface appearance of Jesus, to distract our attention away from anything but the substance of the man. And so no mention was made of those. In other words, if there would have been something in the Bible, just a brief allusion to a nose ring he wore. Every guy would wear a nose ring, every Christian, because they want to be like Jesus. God doesn't want us to be like Jesus in terms of our hairstyle, whether parted on the right or left. He wants us to be like Jesus, the heart of Jesus. His compassion, his kindness, his patience, humility, his gentle spirit. So the Bible presents us with a question today. Who are you wearing? And I think Paul addresses it very succinctly, that quote at the top of our bulletins. Clothe yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ. And then do something about that outfit you're wearing. Please rise.